Good evening and welcome back to the Ask Dr. Renee show. As you know, we've been celebrating National Infertility Awareness Week this week, and I need you to please share the broadcast because inevitably somebody in your life is going through this. They may be talking about it, they may not be talking about it, but I want you to get the information to them. So please make sure you share the broadcast no matter where you're watching, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. Please share the broadcast. Today, we are so honored to have Eloise Drane. Eloise has an amazing company, which she will talk about. But if you saw Eggs Over Easy, which we did do that here on blackdoctor.org, we had several people from Eggs Over Easy, including Shakita, the creator of the documentary. We had them on Black Doctor when Eggs Over Easy was about to premiere on OWN, and we can go back and maybe I'll re-air that one. But you guys need to watch that. But Eloise was in the fabulous documentary, which you can see, and we'll ask her where you can see it. But I know you can still watch it, I think on the OWN app, but some other places. But please, please, please watch it. It's amazing. But Eloise has a story, and I want her to tell her story. So, Eloise, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Renee, for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Eloise, first, let's start with what got you interested in this space in the first place?
Wow. So what got me into this space, honestly, was first, I was actually a kidney donor for a cousin of mine.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And we, after the donation, he lived in California. I went to go visit him and I saw an ad for egg donation. This is when you still could actually pick up like a newspaper and read. And to the back, there was classified ads and there was an ad for egg donation. And my cousin, his sister, that I turned around and asked her, would she ever do it? And she was like, yeah, no. But I already had 3 kids at the time. And I was like, something I probably would do. And then just kind of put it in the back of my mind. About a year later, year and a half later, I started thinking about it again out of the blue and was like, let me call this company and see if I would be able to be a donor. And I reached out to them and they said I would be a great donor, but that Black women didn't have infertility issues. And that.
And what year was this? Sorry to interrupt.
This was in 1999.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. That Black women didn't have infertility issues and that should anybody ever get interested, they would reach out to me. I said, great. And then I didn't hear from them again for another 9-10 months or so. And then they reached out to me and said, we have a family that's interested. Would you be willing to help them? I said, sure. We did the donation. It was actually a horrible experience. I felt used and if I'm being frank, after I did my donation, they received 27 eggs. That's what they told me. The nurse dropped me off at the hotel door after the retrieval. I was by myself. I had no one with me. Told me to take a taxi home and I never heard from them again, or them, the clinic or the agency. So I was like, oh, yep, nope, never going to do that again. And then fast forward 3 years later, that still small voice, right? Was like, you're going to do this again. And there was this website called task.org at the time. It was a classified site that individuals who were looking for surrogates or egg donors or ones that wanted to be could go on and complete their information. So again, that still small voice at the time was like, go ahead and apply. And, you have that battle within your head of, why, I didn't like that experience. It was horrible. And, Black women don't have infertility issues. I mean, Dr. Google isn't what it was today, right? So you really couldn't really find that information to see if it was true or not. So I went ahead and placed my information of being an egg donor. And within 3 to 4 hours, I had so many emails of Black women looking for egg donors. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second. This is definitely not what I was expecting. And so then I went on to speak to these women, and then I decided to work with this particular couple, and did it. It was now an open donation, and I did a journey for them, and it was a completely different experience. And when I was a kidney donor for my cousin, I it was this fulfillment. It was this joy that I felt within myself of being so selfless and being able to give somebody something that they truly he needed it and wanted it. And that was the same feeling that I was looking for when I thought that that was what egg donation was going to be. And so the second time around, I was able to get that again. And so we did that journey and it was amazing. And shortly after, the another family that had reached out to me, and I told them, "I'm sorry, I already been matched with another family," came back and was like, "Would you be willing to do it again?" And then that kind of just sparked this thing in me of like, "Oh my God, if this is what it would be like, yeah, I would love to help other families." So in total, I did 6 egg donation cycles, twice for the same family. And my other subsequent journeys that I did were all opened, and I do still have relationships with those families. And then 2005, I thought about actually starting an agency specifically to help Black women find Black egg donors. But then I found out that I was pregnant with my youngest son. I was trying to finish my master's degree, was working a full-time job, married, 3 kids. It's like, maybe right now is not a good time. Um, but I started looking to see if I could work with an agency to just work in their egg donor program. And I found a surrogacy agency that didn't have an egg donor program. So I started working with them to help them develop a program. And then I learned about surrogacy. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I can do this. I loved being pregnant. I had zero complication. I didn't even have morning sickness. So yeah, I had nothing. And you didn't even know that I was pregnant. I don't really start showing until like my 3rd trimester. So I was like, no problem. The problem came when I went to my husband to tell him I wanted to do this, and he was like, "You've lost your mind." So it took a while to convince him to not convince him, but to educate him on the process, what it was like. And of course, his concern was my safety, my well being. How am I going to react? After delivery, this baby's not coming home. How are you going to deal with that? So, all of the legit reasons of why someone would be concerned. But he true to him, he was very supportive, and I went on to become a gestational surrogate and was a surrogate 3 times. Delivered twins the first time, and then a boy the second time, and then a girl the third time. And it was the first couple that I helped that kind of encouraged me to start an agency. And so in 2008, I started Family Inceptions, and it is a full service surrogacy and egg donation agency. And we were the first agency in the state of Georgia, and unbeknownst to me at the time, I also was the first surrogacy and egg donation, or Black owned surrogacy and egg donation in the country.
Wow. Wow. Well, thank you to you, because not everybody is so giving. So that is wonderful. Um, but I can't imagine. So 2008, so you're still in business. So clearly
Yes.
Black people do have fertility issues.
Yes, very much so. And it's more and more prevalent every day.
Yeah, yeah. And so unfortunately the numbers show that Black women are more likely to have issues, one, two, more likely to not address them until it might be too late. So, this is why we're having this conversation, because we want to make sure that people understand that they need to you need to First of all, when you're in college, you should really start talking to your OBGYN and checking your fertility. Just do a fertility workup. Ask for, just a basic blood tests, AMH, FSH, LSH, AMA, and just getting those numbers to know where you are, because just because you're young does not mean that you have a whole lot of eggs. Perfect example, earlier this week we spoke to Dr. Lauren Powell. She was 35 when she started her fertility journey. They had been trying for a little bit and it just wasn't happening. Her husband wasn't old either. He was around the same age. So for that's just goes to show that you need to check these things, because you don't know. The other
Yep.
thing is, it's not always the woman. And so her husband had low sperm count,
Mm-hmm.
and she spoke about that. He didn't know that, but this is why it's so important that you check these things out, find out what's going on. The one thing about men is they produce sperm all the time, but the one thing about women is you're born with all the eggs that you're going to be born with.
That's right.
So you need to know, and then you can see, what you possibly could do about that. Is it freezing eggs? And then if you're somebody who desires to have a child and your doctor's like, there's just no way you can carry a child, then you need to look into a gestational carrier. And so with your agency, do you have it? Do you like, how does the process work? Like, if somebody called you up and said, I'd like to look into getting a gestational carrier, how does the process work?
Sure. So, and before we even get into that, I just wanted to touch on what you were just speaking about. And I think we as a society, as a Black community, we need to remove the stigma of not wanting to talk about reproductive health. Reproductive health is not just about getting pregnant or your fertility. Reproductive health is all of it, and it starts from when our children and our daughters start getting their periods, and even educating our sons about what that process is like, and stop making it like this needs to be a secretive thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a secretive thing. And if we begin educating our children from when they're younger about the things that they need to be looking out for, it's not normal for you to have so much pain when you have
Yes,
your
I was about to
period
say that.
that
Right.
you can't even go to school for a week. It's not okay that you bleed through your clothes and everything else when you're in college and you don't know what's going on. You need to go get that checked. You need to go get a pap smear.
Mm-hmm.
Don't wait just because, you think that that's an older woman thing.
Nope.
No, it's not an older woman thing. You need to go in early on and be an advocate for yourself and being able to say, okay, I am being sexually active now. I need to go and get a PAP. I need to make sure that I am understanding my body, not waiting on somebody else to tell me how my body is. I need to understand how my body works so that I'm aware if there is something going on or if there's an issue, then I can address that
Right.
quickly
Yeah.
and not have to wait to come to someone like me, because now you've gone through, you're trying to have a child, you can't carry a pregnancy, you have too many fibroids,
Yep.
you have too many problems, and now you need surrogacy. Surrogacy should be the last resort, not the
Mhm.
first.
Right.
So that's the first thing that I would tell anybody. Surrogacy has become much more popular, much more mainstream. When I first started this process in 2007 to become a surrogate, I was an anomaly. First of all, surrogacy was not something people were talking about. And then to talk about a Black woman wanting to be a surrogate, that was even more so of a
Right.
taboo conversation.
Right.
So it has definitely evolved, and I'm glad that it has evolved, and I'm glad that a lot more people are accepting of it, are open to it. But it also then leads this thing to, oh, I can't get pregnant, and so therefore I'm just going to jump to surrogacy. No, surrogacy is the last resort. But if you do need to work with a surrogate, you have to be cautious.
Yeah.
and not jump into it just because now you're so desperate and you want to have a child, and you kind of just throw all of your senses out of your mind because now you're only focused on this one thing, that you want to have a baby. You need to take your time and think about what it is that you're about to do. And it's very difficult for someone to wrap their head around the fact that they have to release
Mm-hmm.
and let go of control of the most important being that is going to be in their life. And they have to let control of that to someone else. Maybe it's someone they know, or it could be a perfect stranger. That is in itself is something you have to process through before you can even say, okay, I'm going to go find a surrogate.
Yep.
So once someone says, okay, I'm okay, I understand the process, I understand that, okay, I'm going to have to let go of someone becoming a surrogate for me, then you have to determine, do I have someone within my circle that can become a surrogate for me, or do I have to work with an agency? And depending on your situation is going to look different, and how your journey is going to be laid out. If you have someone that you know that is willing to be your surrogate for you, that's great. But number one is, how did they come to you and say, they're willing to do it? Did you ask them? Did they ask? And then, are they truly ready to become surrogates? Just because they want to do it for you doesn't necessarily mean that everybody who wants to become a surrogate qualifies, whether they're getting compensated or not.
Right.
If they have to go the agency route, then they have to do their due diligence to make sure that the agency that they're working with is reputable, and that the surrogates that the agency is also bringing on is also qualified. So there's a number of different things that, before you even start on the pregnancy side, you need to actually do your due diligence in order to make sure that the pregnancy is going to happen, and that the baby is going to be healthy and whole when it's time to be born.
Definitely. Um, so they so there, I know that several of the fertility doctors work with different agencies to help their patients. You have the same kind of relationships?
Yes, we work with doctors nationwide. We work with fertility clinics nationwide. We work with parents worldwide. So anywhere in the US and internationally as well. And then we work with surrogates and egg donors nationwide as well. I know we were just talking about surrogacy, but I also want to talk about the egg donation side of things, and people talking about that there is a shortage of Black sperm
Right.
donors and Black egg donors. And quite frankly, it's not that there is a shortage of these individuals. It's that, quite frankly, the fertility clinics have never really done their due diligence to go and seek out Black sperm donors
Not the
and Black
fertility
egg donors.
clinics, the banks.
Well, clinics and banks,
Okay.
both.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um, it's a couple of years ago, specifically 2019, I had a fertility clinic who had an in-house bank tell me that they had Black eggs in storage, but they were going to put it on sale and at a discounted price because nobody really wanted any Black donors. This is 2019. I'm telling you,
Wow.
a lot of this stuff has not changed.
Hmm.
And now, yes, they're doing more to try to bring in donors.
Right.
But when you've pushed donors away for the longest time
It's
because you
hard.
had no interest in them, why all of a sudden do you think that they're just going to now
Turn
jump
around
to
and come
you
back. Yeah.
because, you're placing an ad with a Black face on it? That's not how it works.
Right. And I know for a fact that the other thing is that a lot of the banks, the requirements are so strict that they really do eliminate Black people a lot of the times, which is another reason why they would have a shortage, is because the requirements are just so strict. And it's not even health wise. It's like all these other things that are kind of like I think that's kind of silly, you know.
Mhm.
But
Mhm. Mhm.
requiring college education, require, you know, just a whole bunch of stuff that really,
Well, and to that though, the requirement of college education, it's more so a couple of things. One, they want to make sure that the donor can understand what it is that she's getting herself into,
mhm,
because egg donation is no walk in the park, and neither is surrogacy.
right.
But I think people think, oh, you're an egg donor, you go in, you get your eggs retrieved, and you get your check and you walk away. No, egg donation is something that is a lifetime decision, lifetime, because your eggs can actually result in a human being. And that human being will eventually one day become an adult who then eventually will also have children. So your legacy is continuing
Mhm,
forever.
mm,
Or, for however long God deems, right? And so it's not a decision that you can just say, oh, okay, I'll be an egg donor because I saw an ad and because they told me that they're going to pay me $10,000. I'm just going to go ahead and be an egg donor. That is a decision that you really need to understand what it is that you're getting yourself into. And I feel the problem is a lot of times is there's a lack of education on what all is involved. And it's not just about, okay, she does, she doesn't have a college degree or she does. It's like you also need to talk about the long-term effects of your decision. And the other thing about egg donation now is a lot of people don't understand that there really is no such thing any longer as anonymity.
right. I was
Not
just
with
about to say that. Yeah,
Right, not with things with
with
23 and
23andMe
Me
and
and Ancestry, and those are
Ancestry.com.
just the ones that we know for
Right.
right now. You don't know what's coming down in 5 years or 10 years or even when your children are now adults. One thing that I'm so grateful to God that I did is when I became an egg donor, I was very open with my own children. I have 5 children. One was gifted to me, but I was very open with my children to the point where my now almost 17-year-old wanted to get the 23andMe kit for a gift. And so my kids joke, they were like, don't be surprised, if you get contacted by someone, with mom's donations or whatever, we might have some siblings, the ones that we don't even know, we might have some siblings out there that might reach out to us or whatever. And it's a joke because for me, I normalized it with my children. I
Right.
didn't make it something that it was secretive. I didn't make it that it was something wrong. I didn't make it that it was something that we needed to hide or it was something that, we don't want anybody to know. I normalized it from the time I started doing it. And so because of that, for them, it's the most normal thing.
Yeah.
And as parents, too, when you are even doing egg donation, being able to normalize it with your children from the time that they're young, once they become adults, then it's not going to be something that they're going to be ashamed about or embarrassed about or something that they don't want to, even or a secret comes out and now it's destroyed the
Right.
family because
Right.
it was never shared in the first place.
Right.
Um, Even surrogacy, as hard as it is, there are still people who keep secret that they're working with a surrogate and that they're until it's finally when the baby is there and now all of a sudden they want to share, oh yeah, we had a child via surrogacy. Now some of them don't want to share that because they're afraid of what
Losing
if
the
it doesn't
pregnancy
work and the
or yeah.
outcome and
Mhm.
so on. So absolutely. But others, it's not because they're afraid of the outcome, it's the embarrassment.
That they weren't, for whatever reason, they weren't able to do it themselves. Yeah, I understand. But I think that, like you said, it's a conversation you need to have with your children. If you have birthed children because of egg donation or sperm donation, you need to start as little children. And if you keep talking to them about it, then it's no surprise and it's no, there's no one that can bully them about it because they already know.
Mhm.
It's when you don't tell, that's when you have the issues. That's when
Mhm.
all of the, that's when you need to they need to seek therapy and stuff because you didn't tell them when you should have told them. And now maybe somebody else told them. I did a show about Black adoption and it's the same thing. There's
Yes.
so many people. I have a friend that was on the show. She didn't find out till she was 36, I think 38, that she was adopted. And by that time, both her parents were deceased. So she
Yeah.
couldn't even go back to them and say, okay, why didn't you share this with me? She was living in the same city as 5 siblings.
Yeah.
And I mean, 5 full siblings.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and so this is why it's important that we tell that we have these conversations, albeit difficult or whatever. And, like you said, you were gifted a child. There is a lot of people in the Black community that, big mama raised such and such because of such and such. Well, let's talk about that. Let's not sweep it under the rug. Talk about what happened and who
Mhm.
the person's parents are. These
Mhm.
things need to be known because you net family history, all sorts of information that is out there. And even with the egg donation and sperm donation, I worked in cord blood donation, and I know that when you have egg donation or sperm donation, they give you the entire health history. So therefore, there's no surprises when the baby comes and has whatever because you have the whole health history. So for that reason alone.
But the whole health history, though, as you grow older, shifts. It changes.
Right.
You don't always necessarily know that, when you were in your 20s, that you couldn't get something
Right.
or your health changes in your now 40s, and it's relevant information for that donation that you did when you were in your
Now,
20s.
do you as an agency do random checkups or anything or requests that they call and let you know?
Yes. So
Okay.
we try to reach out to all of the donors that we have worked with in the past. And sometimes you get phone numbers that no
Hey,
longer
yeah.
exist or emails that, whatever. But for donors that we've worked in the past and say, hey, is there any updates? Is there anything that you may want to share with us or whatever that we can go back and then share with family? I mean, we literally have a case right now where a donor was shared with us that um she didn't have any children at the time she did her donation, but her now child has some um uh disabilities that they were born with, which they are found out was hereditary.
Okay.
But when they did her genetic screening, there
That
was
didn't come up.
nothing in
Mhm.
there. So, now they're doing testing to see, was there any correlation? Is it on the father's side? Is it on the mother's side? There's so many different factors, and who knows? It could
Right.
very well be not her at all.
Right.
But those are the things that are so important because that could then potentially affect somebody else's child and somebody else's life.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So we've had quite a few celebrities now that have been using gestational carriers and have come out and shared that information. Thank goodness, because that has really helped the conversation. Gabrielle Union, Candy Burris, it's helped the conversation to get started in our community and not be shameful about it. Candy, she came out and said, I have fibroids. This is what it
Mhm.
is.
Mhm.
It didn't go well that first pregnancy with the
Mhm.
fibroids. And so she said this was the safest route for me. Gabrielle Union wrote a book and talked about how she just had so many miscarriages. And it was just, years and years of this not working. And this is what worked. So when people, first of all, can you roughly say how much does it cost for gestational carrier for people just to wrap their heads around it?
To do surrogacy now in the US, you're looking at probably 150,000 to $180,000.
Gotcha.
Oh,
Gotcha.
all in.
Right.
So you're talking about your IVF, you're talking about surrogate compensation, all of the legal, all of the um, um, mental health, all of the surrogate's medical care, that is the range. And then you're hoping that it works on the first attempt.
Right. Right.
What
Right.
if it doesn't? It doesn't always work on the first attempt, even if you are working with a surrogate. So you have to allow yourself the space to know, like, well, if it doesn't work, am I still financially able to move forward, or is this a one and done try? And it's also one of the reasons, because it is so cost prohibitive for so many people, that we also created and we're going to be launching it, God willing, by the end of this second quarter, called Surrogacy Roadmap, which is an online course teaching families how to do independent surrogacy on their own without necessarily having to work with an agency, but giving them the step-by-step guide so that they know what it is they're getting themselves into, so that they're protecting themselves, their child, and the surrogate. One thing I think a lot of people don't understand is, when someone becomes an intended parent, the responsibility of the protection of the surrogate is also on you, because she is doing this for you as well. And
Right.
as we know, pregnancy is a risk. It doesn't matter if you're carrying for yourself, if you're carrying for someone else, every single pregnancy is a risk. And what these women are doing, they're raising their hand and they are saying, I'm willing to take this risk for you. And so therefore, again, you need to also consider this woman as well that is carrying this pregnancy for you. Even if there is money exchange, that's fine. But at the end of the day, there is no amount of money that is going to cover what she has to endure to be able to have this child for you. She actually is better off going and working at a fast food restaurant and making the same amount or better at the fast food restaurant than it is of her actually becoming a surrogate.
Definitely. And she's part she has a family.
Yes.
Most doctors, and I'm sure your agency is the same, most agencies will not work with surrogates that have not given birth before. So that's usually a requirement. So
That's right.
yeah, so she has a child somewhere too that might need her. And so that is why it is so important. And I know that most of the time, almost like adoption, you get to pick the surrogate, you get looking at profiles to see, because honestly, you're going to have to work with this person and for a long time.
That's right.
And you need to make sure you trust them, because they're going to have your child in them. So you want to make sure you're at your personalities align and whatever. And so you kind of look at, so you have, I'm sure, some sort of something that they read about, or maybe it's video now and they watch and try to get to know, and then they pick, and it has to be a mutual fit too, because I'm sure several surrogates don't necessarily want to work with every parent,
No.
So same thing, they might look at the parents and be like, no, they're not going to be the kind to let go of the control and allow me to, do this for them. So this isn't going to work out. So, you have to, it's a mutual kind of thing, that you have to align.
Yes.
Yeah.
The thing about so I like to break up surrogacy in phases. So there's the discovery and education phase. There's the preconception phase. There's a financial phase. There's then the conception phase, pregnancy phase, and then kind of a journey home phase. The discovery and education phase is that due diligence. It's discovering, if your parents, how does this process work? Who do I work with? Am I going independently, or am I going to have to work with somebody, a stranger that I don't know, commercial surrogacy? And then educating yourself on the cost, educating yourself on the timeline, because everybody thinks like immediately you think you're going to find a surrogate and it's going to happen right away. And that's definitely not the case. And then The preconception phase is that of you creating your embryos and making sure that you have those embryos in place, because gestational surrogacy, you have to have embryos.
Right.
In the traditional surrogacy case, the surrogate is going to use her eggs and also carry the pregnancy. Some states don't even allow for traditional surrogacy anymore. And then the states that do, some of them have restrictions and some of them don't. But it actually is more and more difficult to find women that are willing to become traditional surrogates now.
That which it makes sense. Yeah.
In the financial phase, that is where you're now going to look at the entire cost and what it's going to look like. Surrogate's compensation, her insurance. Can she use her own personal insurance, or do you have to go and buy an insurance policy for her on the open market? What about life insurance? What about disability insurance? What about protective health insurance for her? Then you also need to look at, okay, what is the cost for legal? What is the cost for mental health? What is the cost for escrow? What is the cost to do the IVF? What is the cost to screen the surrogate? What is going to be the cost for her medical insurance? Even if she has insurance, what about copays? What about deductibles? All of those things are now your responsibility, not on the responsibility of the surrogate. What if she's not local to you? Now you have to pay for travel expenses. Then in the conception phase, now you have to worry about, okay, we found a surrogate. Now we need to get the legal contracts done. She has to have separate attorney. You have to have separate attorney. You have to draft your contracts before you can even start the pregnancy. So once you have the contracts done, she also has to go through medical screening, and she should have probably done medical screening before you even did contracts.
Right.
But the medical screening is for her to go to your fertility clinic. They have to vet her. They have to make sure that she actually is qualified to become a surrogate for you. And then once you complete your legal, then you have your embryo transfer. And hopefully it works on the first attempt. But if it doesn't, are you open to, and is she open to doing, a second attempt or a third attempt? Once you're pregnant, then that pregnancy phase begins. And then that's a whole other experience that you have to endure. And then that is a 9-month experience. And in between there of different things that you have to do in between that part, and making sure that you're prepared for when the baby gets here, not just buying products for the baby or making a nursery. What about the legal side of getting the parental order established? So you have to get all of that stuff in order. And then finally, okay, delivery is coming. Well, are you guys on the same page about the birth plan and how that's going to work? And what if there was a complication? Have you talked about that? What if there was a problem during the pregnancy and you wanted to terminate a pregnancy and she doesn't want to terminate a pregnancy? What if you're in a state that doesn't allow for her to have a termination? Is she willing to travel? Are you okay with her traveling? So there's so many different nuances to this thing. And that's why I think breaking it up into phases is so much easier, because then it allows you the time to just, okay, let me just work on this one phase. I'll figure all of that out. Then I'll go on to the next thing.
Right.
And then finally, okay, that journey home phase is great. You finally have your baby at home and all of the other things of bringing that baby home. But now you have to worry about baby's newborn insurance. And what if your company doesn't have insurance that covers a baby, let's say out of state, because that's now a problem.
Yep.
So if you have a surrogate that is out of state, she delivers, let's say you live in Mississippi, she delivers in North Carolina, and your insurance in Mississippi won't pay for your newborn care in North Carolina because they don't pay out of state for any coverage. That actually recently happened. So hence the reason why it's like prime in my head, right? So those are other things that you need to consider. And then you also have to consider, now the surrogate has delivered this baby and you're great in your home, but now she's having complications post-delivery. You're still responsible for that. So again, I think taking things in chunks and breaking it up into phases, especially when it comes to surrogacy, is going to be much easier than just going all in and saying, okay, I'm doing a surrogacy journey and and I'm just going to get a baby at the end. It's like, no, that's not, unfortunately, how it works. There's many steps to this process.
Now, I just have to ask. So, when you had twins, was that one egg was implanted, or and it?
No, two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Most
But
don't get
now,
that. Yeah,
granted, again, when I started my
that was a
process,
long time ago. Yeah.
2007 timeframe, my first transfer, they transferred 4 embryos. The second transfer, they transferred 3 embryos. So they weren't great quality embryos. But even after transferring 4, I got pregnant with one and then ended up in a miscarriage. The second transfer didn't end up in anything. And then the third with the 2 embryos ended up in twins.
Okay, gotcha. So, thank you so much for this. This has been so enlightening. I just want anyone to know, if anyone is interested in egg donation or in surrogacy, do they just contact you and then you vet them and all of that good stuff?
Yes. So, if anybody's interested in becoming a surrogate or becoming an egg donor or needing either or both, yep, they would just go onto the familyinceptions.com website and they are able to find information on there, or they can just easily also call us. The number's 844-404-BABY. So it can't be any more simple than that. And they can give us a call and more than willing to help. And even if they already have someone in mind, they're already in the process and they just kind of have a couple of questions, more than willing to help as well. And Lord knows there's so many things on our website that can kind of give them guidance on there. And as I mentioned too, surrogacy roadmap, God willing, come July will be live, but it really is going to be a educational platform to really educate people on this entire process so that they can especially if they can't afford to go the agency route, that they still have an opportunity to be able to, grow their family one way or the other.
Thank you so much. This is, like I said, has been very, very enlightening. And are there more Black agencies now?
Now there is a total of 6 out of
Okay.
over 200.
Okay. Okay. Well, you got to crawl before you walk. We're getting
Yeah.
there, I guess.
Yes, that's right.
And are you
That's
the only
right.
one in Georgia still?
No, I think there's now 2 of us in Georgia, and then the other ones are spread across
The
the
country.
country. Yeah,
Okay. All righty then. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Eloise. Everyone, please make sure you visit her website and get some information. And like I said, you know somebody and they just haven't talked about it. But you need to be the one to start the conversation with the young people. Like I said, men and women, young
that's
people
right.
in your family, so that we can, because I always say that in the Black family, we're told don't get pregnant, don't get pregnant. And then they forget to tell you you're running out of time.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be like the other people and have family planning conversations and, have, pay for, for graduation, give her an egg freezing package or something. We need to have these conversations and plan the way that our counterparts do with
That's
their
right.
children, because, they seem to be way ahead of the curve as usual, and we are just trying to catch up. So,
Yep.
so thank you so much for your time, and I will see you guys next time.